It started on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I remember it so clearly because I'd forgotten my umbrella and had to run from the parking lot into the gym soaking wet. My leggings clung to me. My hair was a mess and I felt like anything but sexy. Was already annoyed with myself for skipping 2 weeks of workouts, and the guilt of it had pushed me to finally show up. Didn't expect anything except the usual: some squats, some cardio. Maybe a protein shake on the way home. But then I met Julian. He was new. Not the usual type of trainer you see in our quiet suburban gym. He had this calm, focused energy about him. His voice was deep and smooth like velvet, and he smiled in a way that made you feel like he already knew your secrets. I noticed the way he looked at people, not in that sleazy gym guy way, but like he really saw you. I tried to avoid his eyes, embarrassed at how out of shape I felt, but of course fate wouldn't let me hide that day. My regular trainer had called in sick, and the front desk casually mentioned Julian would sub in for my session. He introduced himself with a warm handshake and a confident, "You ready to sweat today?" I laughed awkwardly and muttered something about being rusty. He smiled again, a little slower this time, like he was already reading between the lines. He took me through the workout gently, correcting my form with a touch on the small of my back or the inside of my thigh. Nothing overt at first, but my skin noticed every brush of his fingers. By the end of the hour, my muscles were shaking and my thoughts were tangled. Couldn't tell if it was the workout or the way his eyes lingered a beat too long when I caught my breath. That night, I kept replaying it in my mind. The way his hands steadied me during lunges. The way he said my name softly when I lost my balance. I didn't tell my husband. I told myself it was silly. That I was just flattered, just rusty, not just with fitness, but with being noticed. Being touched in a way that wasn't routine or distracted or half-dash asleep. Something about Julian stirred something in me I hadn't felt in years. Not since before the kids. Not since before the schedule ruled every inch of our lives. The next session with him was different. He remembered things I didn't expect, how tight my hamstrings were, how I hated incline push-ups. He brought me a towel before. I asked and laughed when I made a face at the rowing machine. His laugh was ... It was like a reward, just light enough to make you feel good, just deep enough to make you feel wanted. I noticed how close he stood when he corrected my posture, how his hand lingered that extra second again. I noticed the way his shirt stuck to his chest, how his voice dropped just slightly when we were alone by the stretching mats. Noticed how I didn't stop him when he touched my hip to adjust my stance. I noticed how I leaned into it. He texted me later that night. Just a simple, "You did great today. Let me know if you're sore tomorrow." It should have been nothing, but I stared at that message for 20 minutes before I answered, said thanks, and added a smiley face. I don't use smiley faces. Not with anyone but my kids. He answered back quickly, a little winking emoji that made my stomach twist. I didn't tell my husband about that either. I started booking more sessions. With him only. I told myself it was because he was better than the last trainer. More attentive. More ... motivating. But we both knew what we were doing. There was tension in every set. Every glance, every break between reps, we were circling it. Slowly, carefully, like people pretending not to dance until the music took over. The first time it happened, it wasn't planned. He asked if I wanted to stay after for a short stretch session, said it would help with recovery. I nodded, biting my lip like I wasn't already aching for something else. We were alone in the yoga studio, lights dimmed, soft music playing in the background. He stood behind me, guiding me into a forward bend, his hands on my hips, and then ... He didn't move them. I felt his breath at my neck, warm and slow, and I straightened up without thinking, my back pressing against his chest. He didn't speak. He just turned me around slowly, cupped my face, and kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't forceful. It was soft, curious. like we were both asking the same question at the same time. I kissed him back before I could think. My hands found his shoulders, then his chest, and I pressed into him like I'd been waiting for that moment all year. Maybe I had. His hands slid down my back, firm but careful, like he was learning my shape through touch alone. My breath caught when his lips moved to my neck, trailing heat across my skin as my fingers curled into his shirt. I didn't stop him. I didn't even hesitate. Remember thinking how different it felt from anything I'd known lately, how I wasn't just being touched, I was being wanted. We didn't say a word as he lifted me onto the mat, laying me down with this mix of control and reverence that made my whole body hum. He hovered above me, eyes searching mine for something, maybe permission, maybe confirmation that this wasn't just lust. It wasn't. It was hunger. Yes, but also relief. Relief. Escape. He kissed me again, deeper this time, and my hands moved of their own will up his arms, down his back, pulling him closer, pressing every inch of me against him. I felt his hand slip under my top, pausing briefly, before sliding up to my ribs, his thumb brushing just below my breast. I gasped quietly, not from shock, but from how badly I wanted more. His other hand was at my thigh, fingertips grazing the edge of my leggings, teasing the line where skin met fabric, and I let him, because in that moment, I wasn't a wife. I wasn't a mother. I was just a woman being unraveled slowly, skillfully, like a secret finally told. He pulled back for a second, his eyes searching mine like he was making sure I was still with him, still wanting this. I didn't answer with words. I just pulled him back to me, kissed him harder, arching into him until there was nothing left to hide. He slipped my leggings down with agonizing care, his palms dragging along my legs like he was committing them to memory. His mouth followed, warm and deliberate, kissing his way up the inside of my thigh until I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I moaned softly, fingers gripping the mat, toes curling as he found every tender place I'd forgotten existed. It was slow and intense, like he wanted to savor every reaction, every breath, every tremble. I'd never been touched like that, not with that kind of patience, that kind of focus. My husband hadn't kissed my inner thighs in years, hadn't looked up at me from between my legs like I was something holy. Julian did. He made me feel worshipped, like the center of gravity had shifted and everything pulled toward me. I came quietly, breathless, my body shaking under him as I tried to hold on to the wave crashing through me. He didn't stop until I begged him to, and when he moved over me, finally, I felt him hard and ready through his shorts, pressing between my legs, teasing the edge of what we both already knew was coming. I looked up at him and whispered, "Do it." And he did. Slowly, achingly slowly, he pushed into me, and we both groaned like we'd waited lifetimes for this moment. My hands clutched his back. My lips found his neck, and we moved together with a rhythm that didn't need to be taught. It was like our bodies already knew the dance. Each thrust felt deeper than just physical, like he was reaching inside parts of me I didn't know were still alive. His pace was unhurried at first, savoring the sensation, watching me under him with this intense, almost reverent gaze. My fingers dragged along his back, nails tracing the sweat-slick muscles as I moaned into his ear, letting every sound spill out without shame. There was no need to be quiet, no kids asleep down the hall. Oh, husband in the next room, just us and the heat building between our bodies. His lips found my collarbone, then lower, pulling my top aside and kissing the curve of my breast. His tongue flicking over my nipple until I arched up, gasping, my thighs tightening around him. We changed positions without speaking, like it was instinct, like our bodies had memorized each other. Already, he pulled me on top of him, his hands gripping my hips, guiding me as I slid down onto him again. The angle was different, deeper, more intense. I rolled my hips slowly, grinding against him, watching his face as I took control for a while. His eyes fluttered closed, lips parting, a soft groan escaping his throat as I rode him deliberately, chasing every flicker of pleasure, letting him feel how much I wanted him, how much I needed to be taken, seen, devoured. He sat up, wrapping his arms around me, our chests pressed together as he thrust up into me now. Faster, harder. I clung to him, our breaths tangled, my mouth open against his shoulder as another orgasm crept up fast, sharp, impossible to ignore. I whispered his name against his skin just before it hit me again, my whole body tightening, pulsing around him. He cursed softly, buried his face in my neck, and held me tighter as he followed, his release shuddering through both of us in the dim silence of that yoga room. We collapsed together, still tangled, still shaking. I didn't want to move. I didn't want the moment to end. I stayed curled on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow, feeling the weight of what we'd just done settle between us. But instead of guilt, I felt calm, warm, complete in a way I hadn't felt in years. We lay there for a long time, neither of us speaking, just breathing together in that shared silence that somehow felt more intimate than sex itself. His fingers traced lazy lines along my spine, and I felt his lips press softly against my temple. Not demanding, not urgent, just present. It was strange how natural it felt to be in his arms. How little space there was in my mind for shame. I should have been panicking, overthinking, calculating how I'd hide this or justify it later. Instead, I felt light. Free. My phone buzzed quietly somewhere in my bag. I didn't move. He noticed, but didn't say anything. Instead, he tightened his arm around my waist, his chest rising and falling in rhythm with mine. Eventually, I sat up, brushing my hair back, adjusting my clothes without looking at him. His eyes stayed on me, soft but unreadable. I stood slowly, pulling my leggings back into place, feeling the ache between my thighs like a mark only I could feel, a reminder. And when I finally looked at him again, he smiled, not proud, just quietly aware of what had shifted between us. Coffee? He asked, like we hadn't just crossed 1,000 lines. I blinked, half laughing, not expecting that question at all. Now, I asked. He nodded, standing and slipping his shirt over his head. There's a place down the street. Stay a little longer. And for some reason, I said yes. I told myself it was just coffee, just a conversation to stretch out the moment before real life pulled me back. But I knew it wasn't that. I knew this wasn't over, not even close. We walked out of the gym like we hadn't just redefined the meaning of personal training. I sat across from him at a quiet corner table, still a little flushed, still tasting him on my lips. We talked about nothing at first: workouts, music, the way the rain had finally stopped, and then the silences grew longer, heavier, filled with everything we weren't saying. I stirred my coffee absently, eyes flicking to his hands, remembering how they felt gripping my hips, sliding under my clothes. He reached across the table, brushing his fingers over mine, and my breath caught again. He was watching me so carefully, like he could see the war happening inside my head. He didn't ask if I'd done this before. He didn't ask if I was married. He didn't have to. He knew, and I knew he knew, but there was no judgment in his eyes. Just heat. Just curiosity. Just the hint of something dangerous and addictive. I left that coffee shop with his number saved in my phone, and the memory of his mouth on my skin still haunting every step. I drove home in silence. Windows down, the wind trying and failing to clear my thoughts. My husband was on the couch when I walked in, half watching something on TV, looking up with a distracted smile as I dropped my gym bag by the door. I kissed his cheek out of habit, not emotion. He didn't notice anything different. Why would he? We hadn't really seen each other in months. That night, lying in bed beside him, his back turned, already drifting to sleep, I stared at the ceiling with my phone in my hand. I opened my text. Julian had already messaged. You feel incredible. 3 words, and just like that, I was back in that room. Back under him. Back in his arms. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I typed back. You too. And that was it. That was the beginning of the second time. The second time came quicker than I expected. I told myself I wouldn't see him again so soon, that I needed space, clarity, some moral high ground to stand on. But 2 days later, I was back at the gym, booking a session I didn't need, wearing a tighter top, a cleaner face, my heart already racing before I even stepped through the doors. He was waiting for me, leaning casually against the counter like he hadn't been thinking about it nonstop too. His eyes met mine, and something wordless passed between us. Permission, anticipation, maybe just a memory playing on repeat. We didn't speak much during the workout. My body moved on autopilot. Every rep, every stretch, just a countdown to what we both knew was coming. He pushed me harder this time, closer, testing limits, but never breaking them. His hands lingered longer. His voice dropped lower. And by the end of it, I was breathless, but not from squats or deadlifts. When he asked if I wanted to cool down in the back, I just nodded, not even pretending to play innocent. This time it was faster, rougher, needier. He locked the door behind us and pulled me to him, like he couldn't wait another second. His hands were already under my clothes as he backed me against the mirror, kissing me like he was trying to erase the distance of the past 48 hours. I gasped when he bit my lip gently, moaned when he slid his hand between my legs, finding me already wet, already ready. I tugged at his waistband, desperate to feel him, to have him inside me again before I lost my mind. He lifted me up effortlessly, my legs wrapping around him as he pressed into me, both of us groaning in relief and hunger and disbelief at how good it still felt. The mirror fogged behind my back, his breath hot at my ear as he moved inside me, fast and deep, hands gripping me like he needed to hold on to something real. I buried my face in his neck, biting down to keep from crying out too loud, my body already spiraling again, faster this time, harder this time. He knew exactly how to move, how to hit every spot, how to make me unravel all over him. Afterward, I stood there catching my breath, legs still shaking, forehead resting on his shoulder as he kissed. The side of my neck like a promise we both knew we couldn't keep. He didn't say anything when I started dressing again, just watched me, eyes dark and unreadable, like he wanted to say more but knew better. We didn't talk about what it meant. We didn't talk about what came next, but we didn't have to, because next came anyway. It didn't end in some dramatic explosion. No one found out. There were no screaming matches, no suitcase by the door, no teary confessions. It ended quietly, in small, invisible ways, like the slow fading of a bruise you stop noticing. Julian and I kept meeting for a while, once a week, then twice, sometimes just to talk, sometimes just to fuck, sometimes both. I lived in 2 parallel lives, and for a while, I was convinced I could keep them both afloat. I became better at lying, better at timing. Better at hiding the way my body came alive every time he touched me, and then turned cold again when I went home. But something shifted, slowly, like a clock ticking in the background. I started noticing the way Julian looked at me differently, not with less desire, but with more caution. He stopped texting first. He started asking me how I was more than what I was wearing. He became gentler, and in some strange way, that hurt more than if he'd simply used me. His touch stopped feeling like escape and started feeling like a mirror, and I didn't always like what I saw there. One evening, we lay side by side in his apartment, our usual Thursday routine. His hand rested on my stomach, my head tucked into the curve of his shoulder, the room dim except for the soft glow of the lamp. Ominous sand. He was quiet, too quiet. and I knew something was coming. I tried to pretend I didn't feel it. He said my name softly, like he was holding it carefully. You ever think about how this ends? He asked. I didn't answer for a long time. I just stared at the ceiling, my throat tight, my heart suddenly heavy. All the time, I whispered finally. And that was it. That was the moment I knew it was over, not because we didn't want each other anymore, but because we had already taken everything we could from the fantasy, and reality had finally caught up. I got dressed in silence, kissed him one last time at the door, not the kind of kiss that promises anything, just one that says thank you, goodbye, remember me. I didn't go back to the gym after that. I canceled my membership with a generic email. My husband never asked. He never noticed anything missing. And in a way, that was the real heartbreak. Some days I still think about Julian, about how alive I felt under him, beside him, with him. I don't regret it. Not the kisses, not the sex, not the lies, because for a little while, I remembered what it felt like to be wanted, to be chosen, to be more than a role in someone else's life. But eventually, you come home. You wash the perfume out of your hair. You fold laundry. You make dinner, you keep the secret. And sometimes that's how real stories end, quietly, without fireworks. Just a woman standing in her kitchen, remembering the way another man once said her name like it meant something.